And as soon as it goes live, oh, it is live. You should see it go live in a second, and then you can share. Hey, what's up, Facebook? We need more music.
Louder music.
Yes. My daughter is monitoring the music feed. This is my part where I get to do what I call my Bill Clinton dance, right? And that's where I go, you got to bite the lip. That's the whole thing. That's it, yeah. And you have to do the presidential hands. Right?
Not like somebody else.
Right. Different presidential hands. You might alternate those in there, right? You can go from here with, oh, yes! I can do it is now the Clinton-Trump dance, all right? So I can go from biting my lip and hands like this to...
Oh, look at that. Wow, it worked.
Oh, that's terrible. How's it going, Facebook? Welcome to the show. Ash, you're monitoring the sound, so I'm just trusting you that the music is loud enough. I love the music loud. I really do. I like the song. What can I say? It's a lot of fun. Welcome to the Whine No Whine Show, people. The only show where you can be friended and offended all in the same hour. That's right. America, we have a problem. You know what I'm talking about. I call it the zero to Nazi effect. That's in any given conversation where there's a disagreement. It's the length of time it takes to go from 0 to you're a Nazi. I'm going to punch you in the face and go outside and burn down your car. We have a solution here on the Whine No Whine Show. It's wine. We break bread together. We pour ourselves a great glass of wine and enjoy dialogue and conversation on all of the stuff that everybody always says you're not supposed to talk about. Religion, politics, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We'll talk about it all. Doesn't matter. So, I'm going to pour a nice glass of wine, and today, despite what you might have received in your messenger, we are not talking about vaccinations because that was last week's topic, and some moron, namely me, forgot to change that message. So I got the whole, show updated, link updated, all that kind of stuff, but I forgot to change the darn message and say what we were talking about. So today we're talking about a fun topic. Now, I will tell you, if you guys are, regular watchers of the show and you participate in voting on the survey and that sort of thing, that we typically talk about the number one pick. However, this topic was added during the week, and it still rose to being number 2. And our guests on the show always get the final vote on what we wanted to talk about. And today, we chose to talk about the second subject. And that's just because it's incredibly timely. And that's gun control. We had a mass shooting here in Texas Sunday, as you know, or I would imagine you know. And it's fresh on everybody's mind. A lot of people are concerned about it. There's a lot of thoughts about it. And we want to get your thoughts on it. And, let's see if we can push the conversation forward. Let's see if we can, get anywhere closer to a consensus on what can be done, what should be done, that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, we're going to show America what it looks like when sane, rational adults have a conversation without trying to kill each other on a sensitive topic, right? Because Lord knows, even on this topic, in the last week, I've seen all sorts of crazy madness. I've even got tagged in conversations. Steve tagged me in something said, 0 to Nazi effect, Joe. And I looked at the comment feed that he tagged me in, and I was like, yep, you're right. Just people insulting each other because, that really pushes the conversation forward. Lot gets done. So anyway, this week we're going to enjoy a nice Spanish Tempranillo. Tasty wine from Spain. Tempranillo is a popular grape in that region. It's a lovely red wine. And I'll just quickly here read the back here because I don't want to take up too much time. Grown across the high plains of Carania, thriving despite the hot continental climate and dry conditions. Aided by a high diurnal range and the cooling crosswinds. So during the day it's hot, night cool breeze, so it makes for an interesting grape. And if I remember correctly, this wine is good with heavy pastas, red sauce, that type of thing. And we've had this one on the show before. It's going to be new for Taurian, and it's going to be new for Charity. I think I don't remember if you've had this one. Do you remember?
No.
So it's new for all of the guests. At the end of the show, we're going to rate the wine, and then I post a picture of the wine with the rating up on our Instagram page. So be sure to follow us on the Instagram channel, Wine to Wine Show, and you can find out about the wine a little more there. So I'm going to start pouring the wine. Guests are going to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you, Taurian. Guests are going to introduce themselves. This is a shameless plug section of the show. And they get to promote whatever they want because the pay is really awesome on this show. And it's the shameless plug. So I give them whatever liberty they want with that shameless plug. So have at it, Taurian.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing me on the show. I'm Taurian Harris, still active duty Army. Happy Veterans Day.
Yes!
Thank you for having me on the show. Finally, work has allowed me to come on the show.
Yes!
And I want to get straight to my shameless plug. At first, I was going to talk about me and my wine business, of course, that we are partners in. But let me also tell you about my good friend who just finished her first book. The title of the book is Things You Didn't Learn in School. And it's by Carrie Harthorne.
I just saw that.
Yes, great book. I finished it in one day. It's actually a workbook, so you can actually work through it.
It looks small enough.
Yeah. She completed her MBA, and she said, what do I do now? I need to create a blueprint for other people to actually dive in on. Gun control. Now, let's go straight from the book to gun control. We all know my opinion is very firm on gun control.
Bullet point?
Bullet point. I don't think that we should...
I didn't think you were going to do that.
that we should control
I'll avoid
guns.
it. You don't think we should control guns?
I don't think that we should control
right.
guns. I do believe that we need to come to modern time and regulate our guns a little firmer, but we don't need to use the word control because people don't like the word control. And so we'll get deeper into it, but yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Wish everyone out there a happy Veterans Day, and thank you to my family, my mom. You said I had to thank my mom, so thank you, Mom. Even though you didn't want me to join the Army, you're proud of me now, so here's to you.
All right. Charity.
Hi, I'm Charity, and I saw Tina Kane. I was talking to her right before I came here and told her about the show, so she's watching for the first time.
Yay!
My shameless plug is I'm part of a group of women. We call ourselves the CTT, City Transformation Team, and we're all about transforming Houston. And we have an event coming up for all women out there who want to gain control over their finances in their households. We're having a fun night. It's November 20th. You can see the details on my Facebook page about it. But we're going to be empowering women, teaching them basic concepts about money to help empower them and teach them some ways to get back on track financially, get out of debt, save for retirement, things like that. So we're going to be giving some fun prize giveaways and some food and just have a blast. So leave your kids at home with hubby and come join us for a fun night. And my view on gun control is, my husband, okay, just so you guys know a little bit of backdrop, my husband is from Venezuela. And so I've seen what can happen to a country that the government has taken away their guns, right? And we've seen it time in history again in different countries and in different scenarios where the government takes away the guns, takes away arms, our rights to bear arms, and we've seen nothing but good things come from that. So I don't believe guns should be taken away. However, I do believe that there should be certain regulations and tighter restrictions when it comes to gun ownership. And I want to have sensitivity on this because of what just happened with the whole shootings and everything. But yeah, we'll get into more detail with that being said. So,
Okay.
Steve?
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve, and been a regular on the show for forever. All I can say is go Navy, beat Army. That's one of my shameless
Navy,
plugs for this year.
Army.
Yeah. It'll happen this year, hopefully. I just, real quick, bullet point on gun control. I think most everybody knows my position on it. I would like for this to not be an issue, bottom line. And if there was ever a day that I left my front door and I forgot to strap on my legally owned and properly credentialed firearm, for lack of a better term, and I decided, gosh, I may not need to go back inside and get it, that's a day that I look forward to. But in today's time and nature of society, it's impossible to not have your head on a swivel, be very aware of your surroundings, and be there for other people, because other people are not going to feel like we do. So that's it.
All right. So let's get some audience feedback here, guys. Chime in on this subject. Give us your thoughts on where you stand on this. Gun control. Do we need more? In the light of the last 2 years, especially the last 2 years being having the highest death tolls, the highest counts when it comes to mass shootings, that type of thing. Do we need more gun control? What are your thoughts on solutions, if so? And if you're opposed to it, why? What's the thoughts there? So I'm going to jump in real quick and a couple fun comments here. One I wanted to share for you. David, who's a regular on the show, David Pipkin, gave you a shout out. And said he was sorry he couldn't be here to be on the show with you.
I wish he was here.
Yes, big fan of yours. We always love your comments. So he said, "Hey, Taurian, I'm sorry I can't be there to meet you in person." David.
All right.
So just wanted to chime in. So
do you think that David is going to be at the Casa Nueva?
I wonder, David.
David,
are you going to be at Casa Nueva tonight? Actually,
I'm doing a plug for him. So yeah.
There you go. I think he might actually have a gig at his the old folks home, the retirement home, whatever it's called.
No,
politically correct terminology these days. I said old folks home. I am certain that is not the proper terminology, and I apologize for my terrible words there.
Well, I might be heading in that direction. You never know.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Okay. Me too. So happy Veterans Day. Giving you a shout out, Taurian. Yes, Alex there, and Steve is also Navy, so veteran. Thank you for serving. Terry said, "Okay, who is the cameraman?" Terry, that would be my daughter. So she's also doing the job of two people at one time. She's running the comment feed, the video, sound, and camera all at once. So if you'd like to volunteer, I have a job opening. She's
doing a great job.
It pays wine. So show up and you'll get wine.
It pays wine.
Right, which is why my cost has been great so far. So she's underage. Trav said, we need better people control, not gun control.
So he's also in the Army. His Trav
Tarver.
Yeah.
Trey or Trav?
We'll go with Trav Tarver because that's what it says.
And yes, David said he was going to be at Casa Nueva tonight at 7 p.m.
Shameless plug. There we go. So Trav said we need better people control, not gun control. Mm-hmm. And Trav, if you would, break that comment down even more. I agree with that statement right off the bat. I want to see where you're headed with it.
Hold on. My mother said Betsy is my best friend. I'll tell you that's her 9-mil. So Betsy is her best friend.
When Mama names her,
who's your mom?
When she names her Gogan, that's
Ursula Harris right there.
Ursula. Oh, there's you, Ursula.
And she said, I like Taurian. He looks smart.
I like that Taurian. He looks smart. Yeah, Mom, giving him a shout out.
Taking good care of him, Mom.
Yeah, Betsy is my best friend. Her 9mm. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so let's see here. First of all, Raphael, thank you for tuning in. Alex, thank you for tuning in. Ursula, obviously I know why you're tuning in, but thank you for tuning in. Terry, thank you for tuning in. Mary Evelyn, thank you for tuning in. Said some mamas don't have hubbies.
You could leave your kids with my husband and come join us at the event, or you can find a friend or your parents.
See, there we go. She's addressing your concerns right here on the show. Charlotte, thanks for tuning in. Joanna, regular guest on the comment feed, trying to get her on the show, and she's a phenomenal artist, and we need to get her on. So Tina, thanks for tuning in. Teresa, thank you for tuning in. Tamara has been on the show and has a lot of good thoughts. So Tamara, you chimed in last night. We were talking about the subject on Artist Show. I want to see your comments on this show as well because you got some great points, and I'd love the audience to hear them. So please chime in. Joe, thanks for tuning in, brother. Gun control, do we need more, less? What's the deal? Tansanya, she said speak Tory. So
I guess that's a good thing. And it's
right?
Tanzania.
Tanzania.
Yeah, speak, Tori. Okay.
All
I
right.
will speak.
There we go. There we go. Raphael said very well spoken. I don't know who that was addressed to, but hey, we have smart guests. What can I say? Alex, thanks for the shout out for the veterans on the show. Stephanie Harris said, "Hey nephew, love
That's
you."
my auntie. That's
Right,
yeah.
your auntie. All right.
Freezing in Chicago.
All right, it's nice and cool down here. Not cool by Houston standards, which means it's probably burning up for Chicago.
Speaking of Veterans Day, that's where I went to boot camp. Up in Chicago,
yeah, Great Lakes.
So,
yeah.
I was kind of miserable up there. It was during February, so it's kind of bad.
David chimed in. David said from the Wine to Wine show, yes, we need more citizens in control of their own guns. Good guys with guns outnumber bad guys with guns. That's how we save lives. Great point. Renee chimed in. She said, I think we need gun education. Teach people how to properly respect them instead of glorify them in video games and movies. Define the power it should have instead of allowing TV to do it. That's a very salient point. A lot of meat to chew on in that comment, Renee. I definitely think there's a good point that we need to dwell on in that comment. Steve gave a shout out, or David gave you a shout out. Thank you for the shameless plug. Sherwin said, we don't need any more gun control. Flat out. We don't need any more control. Okay, so Sherwin, I get accused of this all the time, that gun lovers just want to do nothing, right? As soon as they see a comment like yours, they're like, we have a problem, and you're just a gun nut gun lover, and you don't want to do anything to fix the problem, right? So, when you say we don't need any more gun control, how do you address that, Sherwin? Give me some feedback here. What do we do?
Terry Bryan Bending both are saying the same thing, so either one of them could come in and chime in with that.
Yeah, we need some more thoughts on that. Share with us on that. Terry, thanks. Terry dug himself out of the hole, actually, and said you are doing a fine job. So, Robert is going to be on the show. He chimes in on a regular basis. He said, I think we need less gun control and more prevalent training, including mandatory courses before critics should be taken seriously. So we kind of talked about this before the show, maybe a continuing education kind of approach to guns. So we'll address that when we get through the comments here in the feed. Janine said yes to gun control, specifically assault rifles. I don't believe when the Founding Fathers drafted the Second Amendment that they could not have envisioned how they're being used today. Boy, do I want to comment on that. Trav said, law-abiding citizens follow the rules, not criminals. So he's elaborating on his point, right? Go Sergeant Harris. Happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service. I concur. And Eric gave you another shout out there. Chelsea Connolly said, there are more aspects to consider regarding gun control than just mass shootings. When you start considering things such as violent crimes in areas where guns are more restricted, there's more violent crime per capita. Yeah, that's a great point, Chelsea. I have to agree with you. If you look at the cities with the most strictest gun control, Chicago, D.C., New York, we also have the highest murder rates, the highest crime rates. I will ask you, because I was challenged on this thought, and it's a worthwhile thought. And my friend is from Chicago here, so I'm sure he had some comments on this. One of the comments was the problem isn't because of the strict gun control. It's because that population is under strict gun control and limiting arms that the surrounding counties that don't have these strict gun laws, that the criminals still have easy availability to these weapons. And so it's creating this disparity of, where good citizens who are limited by the laws aren't able to defend themselves. So what do you think about that? Is that true? Is that a valid point?
I would like to bring up a point. There was a little bit of a contention a few weeks ago when we were talking about this. You had made a comment online. I hadn't met you yet. And through the value I put in trying to understand your position, when I found out that you were from Chicago, I took a step back, not reluctantly, but what I wanted to do was to try to meet you today and discuss the fact that you thought that my facts were untrue as far as the nature of the crime and the shooting crimes in Chicago. And even though I was just a visitor there for a couple of months and very focused on something else, over the years that I've been watching these things, and very much the point that Joe was bringing up about the nature of the crimes in Chicago. Crime is crime everywhere you go. It just seems to me like it was more intense, and it was to a specific demographic up there. I did not see much white on black, black on white. I saw numbers that reflected black on black crime. That was not meant as an insult. It was meant as an example of, okay, where do we put our focus on? Where do we find out a way to give people through discussion the tools that they can to address this? Is it a gang focus? Is it just a general criminal element? Is it something that is just a societal issue up there? I don't know. So I would like to know the actual real details when you were growing up.
I want to throw out, and then we're going to start digging in. All right.
Okay.
Trav further elaborated. He said the problem lies in a lack of mental health treatment, drug abuse, and things that lead to these people going out and making terrible decisions. Boy, I want to talk about that, Trav. Let me tell you, I've done a lot of research in that area. Ursula said, we don't need gun control, we need people control. More mental health facilities, government learning how to agree to disagree without bringing shame and disrespecting others. Another mental health focused comment. We definitely need to dig in and unpack those comments, because we've got a lot of people chiming in on that aspect of it. David chiming in again as the Whine to Whine show said, it's not just about availability, Joe. It's about laws and regulations which prevent the lawful carrying of firearms by law-abiding citizens. There is no better way to multiply the body count than to increase the scope of the dreaded gun-free zone. David. Chelsea said, how do you apply those arguments against violent crime being where guns are restricted to places such as Australia and the UK, where the gun restrictions are equivalent to a federal level? Right? So it's well known in Australia that basically they had a big gun roundup, right? Nationwide, right? And it's demonstrable that over the course of about 20 years that violent crime has come down, right? That is a definite thing in Australia, all right? So is that something to look at? Now, I really want to toss this out. I'm going to make the point. I'm not going to go long-winded about it. Somebody commented in the feed earlier about not needing assault rifles, right? The civilian population not needing assault rifles. I just want to ask the group that's tuned in and watching right now, on a global level, what is the source or the cause of the greatest level of murder, right? On a global level, what is the greatest cause of human death globally from the history of mankind? Anybody know the answer to that question? Connected to that is, do you know what the purpose of the Second Amendment is? I want to put those two thoughts together, see what you guys have to say on it, because so much misunderstanding about the intent and purpose of the Second Amendment, and for that matter, why so many Americans are so adamant about not restricting access to firearms, right? If you understand the Second Amendment, if you understand what the greatest source of murder and human extinction, genocide, all that type of thing is throughout history, you'll know why the Second Amendment exists, and that will give you a different perspective on why we have guns, right? So chime in with your thoughts on that. I definitely want to see who's dialed in on that comment. But we had a lot of comments. One, Steve had a comment direct to you, so I want to give you the opportunity to answer that. And then I want to go back to the panel here, and let's talk about mental health.
I've been waiting weeks for this answer.
It doesn't matter what I gave him some stall time.
There is a perspective. I wanted to let you know that there is a perception and perspective to this issue, and your input to answer me is very welcome. I mean, you're not going to offend me one bit.
Okay, so
just slap him. I have nothing to say to you, sir. Smack!
Okay.
So
I'm kidding.
Down, Joe, down.
I've argued the debate on Chicago for years. I haven't lived in Chicago in a while.
Okay.
However, I visit home, and I don't have the fear that everyone has that they get from CNN or Fox or MSNBC. Chicago is home. You know, I grew up, I played the streets, I rode my bike, I did all the things that children do growing up that they don't do anymore. But it's not just Chicago, it's worldwide, you know.
Okay.
However, I will say that Chicago is not the murder capital of America per capita.
No, it's not. No.
I think D.C. holds that distinction, does it not?
It could be D.C., it could be New Orleans, it could be Benton Harbor, Michigan. It could be, sorry, Cindy, but it could be a lot of places. You know, it could be a lot of places right now.
I'm so glad you said that.
However, Chicago is publicized heavily. And, you know, so we are regulated. It has been regulated in Chicago with guns. And I was just telling a classmate this week that Chicago is surrounded by states that have very, very liberal gun laws. And so when you're surrounded by states that allow things that you don't allow, people will outsource. And so most of the guns in Chicago that are used to commit crimes are illegal weapons. That's a given. I do not believe that fits into the scope of what we speak when we say gun control or gun legislation right now. I believe that's a separate matter. And I believe if we bulk them together, sometimes I just feel like people use that as a deflection, you know, and so they deflect to Chicago or all the other violent places to stay away from the truth. And the truth right now is we're focusing on violent mass murders, you know, not what's been happening in Chicago for the last 20 years, since 30, 40 years since the Al Capone days. This is a larger scale than just the violence on the south side or west side of Chicago. This is something that can be controlled right now in every state. Chicago has to attack their problem as a community. It cannot be done at a federal level. People in the community have to get out and take back their streets. Now, as far as Texas and other places I've lived, North Carolina, when you deal with mass shootings, I remember being in Afghanistan, and we were watching, Kuwait, and we were watching the news, and that's when the mass shooting had happened at Fort Hood. And I kept thinking to myself, man, this is what's happening stateside. What are we going into Iraq? You know, and it hasn't changed. It continues to get worse, and we are becoming immune to it. We're becoming more attached to the idea that we will do anything to hold to our guns. We don't want people to take away our guns. I'm a law abider. I haven't broken any laws. No one has come into my house and asked me to give away my gun. However, I do believe, like I said earlier, I believe people, they should be held accountable. I believe that owning a weapon is a privilege, which I said earlier. And I believe that it should be tried. If not annually, maybe every 2 years, you should have to go in and either recertify to ensure that you do meet the criteria to maintain this weapon. If you go out and you commit a violent crime or you beat your wife, no one comes to your house and confiscates your weapon from you. And that should happen. You should not be allowed to maintain that weapon. Why? Because you have already shown that you do not have the mental capacity to operate this weapon. And so I think we're diving real deep when we say mental illness, but some of the things we can control without going so deep immediately. Let's start with the surface, the true problem. The true problem is people have committed just enormous amount of violent crimes in the last, since Columbine. I was a freshman that year, with weapons. We might as well call them weapons of mass destruction. Anytime you can mow down 56 people or 39 people or 9 people in a church or 26 people in a church, children up at Sandy Hook, and the only thing we can do is hold on to our right. It's my right to bear arms. Yes, it's my right, but what about that mom? What about that father that lost that child or that grandparent? That's their right to love that family member also. And I know that me and some people will never agree. This is just it's a tough subject. I haven't lost anyone close to violence, luckily. But I do believe that the people that have, a large majority of them, may not agree, but they see it differently. They do understand that, what was the argument last month? It was the butt stocks, right?
Yes.
Bump stocks.
Bump stocks. Yes.
I don't need a bump stock if I want to make a semi-automatic weapon an automatic weapon, right? Whose argument was that? Was that just a way to make people happy for a month? And now a month later we have another 26 people 8 people from one family. This guy should have never had a weapon. Should have never. He was discharged dishonorably from the Air Force.
Yep.
The Air Force, I don't know much on that investigation, so I can't speak on that investigation.
They dropped the ball.
But they did drop the ball.
And there was no official handoff between your service record if you're discharged. I think the Department of Defense, knowing where our background, I think the Department of Defense is reviewing their policies regarding people. There's not very many people that serve that are dishonorably discharged. That's almost like being a convicted felon when you get right down to it.
Exactly.
And some of the conditions of your parole, for lack of a better term, when you are kicked out of the service under a DD, a dishonorable discharge, the way I understand it is that I think that the handoff between that, the Department of Defense, and your home of record, start there. Where are you going to go? Are they going to kick you right off the base and you're going to be out in that population, or are you going to be shipped home to your home of record? Then there needs to be a handoff to local law enforcement. I think it's almost on the verge of almost equivalent of being a sex offender. You have to register as a sex offender. If you have been dishonorably discharged, I think a solution from the Department of Defense standpoint is to have that moniker travel with you wherever you go. You have to register. There's where you get your database, or your at least the local law will know that, hey, I have a dishonorable discharge person that is living amongst us. We need to kind of be aware of that person. So there's where you get that kind of, what, for lack of a better term, the people control. I have a little bit of a problem with that, but in this instance where you have served dishonorably and you are discharged, then that to me seems like a solution.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
And I want you to chime in with an answer on this, because I know you had something to say on this subject. One, we're talking about with mass shooters. The last 2 years, this year, which isn't even over, is the number one amount of deaths due to mass shootings. The previous year was 2016. So the last 2 years have seen the highest number of mass shootings. 2016 was 188 deaths due to mass shootings. So far this year, 217 deaths due to mass shootings, right? I do not want to downplay the tragedy that is the 188 and 217, right? But we're a nation of 323,100,000 some change, right? 188 and 217, I don't even know what the percentage would be. It's 0.0001%, something like that. In a nation of 280 million plus guns. Yet, let's take all gun deaths, all gun-related deaths, come out to about 33,000 a year. 33,000 murders a year. Some of those are justified, etc. I'm like, they're justifiable homicide, whatever they get
self-defense,
that type of thing, right? But there's 33,000 some change gun-related deaths every year. However, each year in America, over 100,000 people die every year because of prescription drugs. Over 100,000 deaths. Now, I'll take it a step further. I would challenge you. I did the work. It's not exhaustive. I took about an hour of my time to do it and put together a list. Maybe I'll post it again somewhere in this comment feed for you guys to see. I went back all the way back to Columbine, and I looked up every mass shooter I could find. Mass shooters defined by FBI and most law enforcement agencies as 3 deaths or more, yes. Including the gunman. So it could include the shooter himself, right? So 3 or more. And with rare exception, the percentage was in the 90s that the mass shooters were on a psychotropic drug. An antidepressant, right? Yeah. And very often, Fort Hood, you mentioned it, on a cocktail of drugs. Multiple different drugs, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
it was a long-winded build-up, and the floor is yours.
So there was a comment earlier by the Whine Show. I guess that's David. who said, that the psychotropic drug thing or mental illness thing is overplayed. That there's a spiritual void, which you got to understand when there's anytime there's light, the darkness hates the light, and so there's always going to be good and bad out there. Okay, so I don't know if it's necessarily a void of spirituality, but there, like he said, he created a very good point. The facts are there's not enough regulation when it comes to gun owners and being on having a mental illness. I believe there needs to be a higher standard with that. There needs to be some kind of check where HIPAA can get along with I don't even know the
yeah, that's right. No, you're right. You're right. HIPAA, HIPAA
so
laws.
Where they can allow us or the authority to check their prescription history in order to get a gun. And I believe also, just like in the financial industry, we have to update our license, get continuing education once every year, once every 2 years. I believe there also needs to be some kind of standard there with gun owners once a year, once every 2 years, to still be in good mental health to keep their guns.
So do you think
I feel
that
strongly about that.
a person that does the right thing and seeks help, mental help, right, and they get the treatment that they deserve and the medication that they deserve to treat their issue because they're a responsible adult?
He beat me to the
believe
host
that
question.
Yeah,
I was only going to ask this question.
that they should not be allowed to own a firearm because
Ever?
Many soldiers come back, many sailors and Marines come back from overseas, and they have to find I shouldn't say find a way to escape, but the medications that are given are these antidepressant medications that we're talking about. And so for a long time, our Vietnam veterans were scared to receive help because they didn't want people pointing the finger at them like, oh, you're crazy, oh, you this, that, and the other. But now we have a point in life where people feel comfortable seeking help. Mm-hmm. Now, I agree with you, but I also say, how do we do that without limiting a person to say a person is authorized to own a weapon if they don't seek that help? Now we are finding ourselves back into a corner of people that really need help that don't want to get it because they don't want to give up their guns. And
you're creating a decision that somebody will make. If I want to go seek help, or do I want to retain my ability to own and possess a firearm?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And even in the Army, right now, we have soldiers that probably want to seek help, but if you seek that help, it keeps you from getting other jobs in the military. And so they want to extend their service to do a drill sergeant rotation or a recruiter rotation, but if they don't go seek this help, then it automatically limits them from actually ever filling those roles. Right. That, to me, is actually absurd because now you're placing a person in a corner saying, don't seek the help that you truly need. I believe that we can tackle this. I hate to use the word gun control because it's like saying your husband should control the wife, or, this person needs to control this situation. It's so demanding. But if we just use, as they said, common sense legislation, then I honestly believe that, like an organization, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, you would have never imagined that in the 60s and 70s, right? People drove drunk all the time. You'd have people with 6, 7 DUIs. Why? Because it wasn't a big deal. We just talked about it earlier. Buckling up, nobody buckled up when I was growing up. Some cars didn't even have seatbelts, right? The middle didn't have seatbelt. The back bench might not have had a seatbelt. But over time, we've grown. And we've learned that seatbelts save lives.
Well,
save more lives than they actually take away.
Because, exactly. Well, there were so many events that happened that created those laws of, okay, if you've had a DUI, we're going to suspend your license, you're going to get a felony or misdemeanor. Same thing with this topic that we're talking about when it comes to gun laws. There's so many events that come up, and that's what creates these conversations, because there's one side that wants to take away guns from citizens, and then the other side, I want to keep my guns, gun control. There's two totally different sides, but there needs to come a point where, okay, just like you get your right taken away, you get your license suspended if you drive drunk, there should be some kind of regulation that if you are mentally ill, or that you have a history of mental illness, or domestic violence, that you should not be able to own a gun.
And I would let's toss this out. Let's toss this out. There's a couple great comments, and I'm going to kind of address some of them indirectly, guys. So I really appreciate you chiming in. First of all, I will say also, I go back after the show, so tomorrow morning, every comment on the comment feed I will respond to. So if you've commented, don't feel like you're getting ignored if I don't mention you on the show. Just because of the format of the show, we can't address everything. But I will respond to every comment in the comment feed. So chiming in with the mental illness thing. I really want to reiterate this, right? The responsibility of freedom is a heavy burden, right? And to take it off of the Second Amendment and move to the First Amendment, for instance, right? We have freedom to speak pretty much whatever we want, right? Barring, going into a crowded place and shouting fire or whatever, we have limitations for the protection of life. The responsibility of the freedom of free speech is that we have to listen to morons, right? People have the freedom to say idiotic stuff, right? I asked the question earlier, and I saw Ed commented on this, and I didn't see if anybody else got to comment on this. I asked who the number one, what was the number one cause, number one motivator for murder, and do you know why the Second Amendment exists? He commented and said the Second Amendment exists to protect us from our government. That's exactly right, and I'll go a step further back to say that our founding fathers understood that the number one source, hands down, not even close. I mean, we're talking somebody in Las Vegas holds the dubious record of killing 58 people, maybe 59. I can't recall if somebody died. I think it's 59. Somebody was on critical that died. 59 people. Well, Stalin killed 60 to 75 million. We can't even wrap our heads around that. Mao, somewhere between 30 to 45. Pol Pot, Hitler, they're slackers, at like 6 to 10 million, depending on who you ask, right? Governments kill more people than anything is even close. Even our own government is guilty of heinous things throughout time, right? The idea of the Second Amendment is that we have a freedom. Mm-hmm. And that freedom exists so that we can curb the number one killer of human beings in all time, which is government, right? The idea is that if a Hitler's rising to power, he doesn't have the opportunity to come to power. He doesn't have the opportunity to go to the Jews and take away their guns and then put them in camps. That's what happened, right? That's a reality. Mm-hmm. So that exists. So I mean, that's why the Second Amendment's in place. Again, I want to go back to and point out, it's tragic. It's tragic. I don't want to undermine the tragedy that is 188 people last year, 217 this year, right? But we're a nation of 323 million. Is that even? In reality, it's a blip on the radar.
I think it's important for the 217 people that were affected by gun violence that it's important to those families. I'm not ever going to relinquish that. That to me is extremely important. I think what Taurian had brought up earlier about, through your reasoning, and I've heard this before in years and years and years of studying and arguing for and against the Second Amendment. I do throw things in it just to see what would happen that go against what I believe. But I think every time I hear the word common sense and reasonable gun control, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because it's not that I'm worried about that person. I'm worried about the direction, the sensibilities. This freedom that we have in this country is not unique. There's freedom all around the planet in different countries to varying degrees. Our degree of freedom in this country, for lack of a better term, may not be perfect. Okay, we're going to have instances like Las Vegas. We're going to have instances like church shootings, because we have a population out there. We have little bits and pieces of people out there that are absolutely out of their gourds, okay? And that trying to get through there and classifying, labeling, and giving the government one more thing to control over our lives I have a distinct concern about. I don't fear it. I have a concern about it. And that I would not want that.
What does the government do good?
When have they actually done something that's been
chime in on that
good?
one.
What Joe says is very, very true. And so where I would love for
trust government
places around this country that have a problem with gun violence, I want to see that mitigated. I want to see something about that removed from the picture in people's heads about that area. When you talked about Illinois being surrounded by states that are very liberal or loose with their populations being able to acquire firearms, and that percolating into the state of Illinois, the sovereign state of Illinois. Believe me, David's going to love that part. I see microcosms within Illinois, Springfield, Cook County. These places have absolute. You can't walk around. You can't walk outside your door with an assembled firearm. You can't even have one in your home that's loaded in some cases. Some of their laws are so restrictive on a reasonable and person with common sense to be able to protect themselves and be a impediment to the psyche of your criminal element in that area. Because Houston has that same problem. I guarantee you, the same mindset of a criminal in Houston, Harris County is almost identical to what's going on in Cook County and Chicago. I think that's pretty much a symbiont kind of a way that people get along around the country. And it's, to me,
Steve, let me ask you a question then.
That reasonable stuff.
Right. David's chiming in. You and he are expressing the same point. I have expressed very similar points. I think I've made myself pretty clear on where I stand on this, at least as far as I think it's governments are always the source of the problem, and I don't trust them. And that's the founding fathers are like little bitty government and people as armed as possible to keep them in check. I mean, that was to me where the government stood when the Second Amendment was made. Somebody even commented, we need to revisit it because I don't think the founding fathers knew what we were going to be up against now. No, wrong. The founding fathers said you can own a cannon. I mean, they believe me. They were aware, right? The latest technology in firearms was discussed and was 100% repeating the Giondoni repeating air rifle was the most advanced weapon on the planet as far as firearms go, and that was on the table. 100% civilians should and could own it, down to a cannon, which would be equivalent of a freaking tank or a howitzer. I mean, like artillery. They said you could own, right? So believe me.
Will we agree that the founding fathers didn't get it all right the first time around?
Of course, right? And absolutely. But I'll tell you what.
There were some flaws.
I absolutely. But I'll tell you what. I honestly believe that they were smarter and more informed than we are today. And I'll say that for this reason, because they had the equivalent, for most of them, the equivalent of 4 degrees now, right? Spoke multiple languages. They held law degrees, all while running their own business. They worked an average of a 14-hour workday, on and on. I mean, I can go down the line. In comparison to what we do now, we flip on the boob tube, we tune out. The average American watches 5 hours of TV a day, right? I mean, we might as well just, put the anesthetic drip in and unplug for 5 hours a day. The founding fathers were highly informed. Are they flawed? Abso-freaking-lutely. I'm not trying to take away from that. But they did know and study governments throughout history, right? And so it was based on a pretty darn good understanding of the problems at hand, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying they can't be flawed, right? Mm-hmm. So when the person made the comment that they didn't know what we'd be up against now, I'm like, yeah, they actually did. They did debate that topic and should a citizen be able to have the latest technology, long rifles, repeating rifles, all that. They debated it. Should they have a cannon? All that. They talked about it, right? So it was already a topic of discussion.
They
right?
keep asking about,
so,
I thought this was a wine show. How about we all cheers real quick?
Yeah!
Oh, we forgot to have a clinkable moment here.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. But where I was,
Why so
I
serious?
get on rants, and this is a topic. This is a topic that I like to talk about, and it's something I'm informed on, and I'm big on freedom and not trusting the government, right? I'm big on freedom, and I understand that with freedom comes the morons, right?
I mean, I just think that so.
Well, wait, hang on. So okay. I want to finish this thought, and then get back to you guys, and y'all can have it, right? I genuinely believe that governments kill more people than anybody. Stalin, 60, 75 million, etc. All those list of people, millions. You'll never compare with individuals, even at 56 in Las Vegas. As tragic as that was, no comparison. And so addressing 188 people last year, 217 this year, and trying to strip away freedoms for me is way more problematic, right? But I don't want to be the gun lover nut who says, I'm doing nothing. Right. What do we do to fix the problem? What do we do to fix the problem? Right? That's really, I want to wrap up the show with that part of the dialogue. Right. And let's talk about that.
So to piggyback
and for you guys, the same. What do we do to fix the problem? I don't want to limit freedom. I don't want to take away guns. I don't even want to restrict it. I think citizens should own a freaking tank. All right, if they want to.
And they do.
Right?
There's a lawyer in town that has that.
I think we should all be able to drive around tanks.
So both of these guys kind of agree with each other.
So
in
what
the
do we do?
That they don't want more government control, but at the
what
same
do we
time,
do? There's a problem. What do we do?
Going back to my point about the driving drunk, right? Eventually they're gonna take your license away if you've had 3 DUIs. Okay, there needs to be more restriction for gun owners, because both of the shootings, the one in Vegas and the one in the church, were taking, they were mentally ill. There's a mental illness that led them to that. There's something wrong with that.
So
and it needs to be addressed.
I could play devil's advocate. I could argue both sides because that's what a good debater should be able to do.
Yes.
However,
which he's very good at, by the way.
However, I think that we need to quit. Okay, so the founding fathers called it, a right, an inalienable right, right? Mm-hmm. I think it shouldn't be. I think it should definitely be a privilege, like driving, right? Because once you call it a freedom, then it shouldn't be taken away. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it really hard for us to regulate it if it's a freedom, because you have the right to do it. How can I take it from you? Mm-hmm. But if we call it a privilege, like which it should be,
then it's controllable.
Then it's controllable. Now, not controllable from the sense of we're going to take your guns from you. Right. But
not yet.
But if you break the law, then you should not have a gun, especially a violent crime. Question. So usually, but far less lately. Right. So if you commit a felony, you can't vote. Right.
That's correct.
But you can still purchase a gun in Texas at a gun show.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely crazy. You can. Peer-to-peer, me and you can go to a gun show and you can sell me a gun.
That's right, because Texas state law says that there's no registration. Mm-hmm. There is no reason why 2 legal adults who are not engaged in certain activities. We've had this defined in state legislature over the last 10 years. We've had a lot of work clarifying a lot of these positions, and when you're talking about rights and freedoms and stuff like that, you need to go back and remember what our Supreme Court in D.C. has affirmed. Affirm means those 9 justices got together and they banged it out once again what the Second Amendment really means, and that is an individual right, meaning that the individual has the right to keep and bear arms per that pesky Second Amendment. Now, you also have the right to screw up, okay? And therefore, state laws come into play that address. Everything about gun violence is a reactionary issue. We cannot predetermine someone's motivation in doing that. It's very rare do we actually are able to stop somebody from doing a Vegas shooting, doing a church shooting, something like that. It's always reactionary. And damn it, if there was ever an instant where
Steve said the D word.
I did. I put it out there. At least I didn't say the other one. Anyway, what I'm saying is that there are many instances where gun owners that are very adamant, like myself, we are pained every single time something like this happens, because we know what's coming. We know the emotion behind this stuff. I mean,
right.
if there was was an instance where I could stop it, I would have done that. And ironically, in a state that has some of the most liberal,
super quick.
I want her to get her comment, and then I want to address something before anybody responds.
Some of the greatest protective things that were put in place were due to a reactive situation in our history. So, like for example, 9/11. So the airplane, TSA got a lot more restrictive. Nobody liked it, but it's for a reason. We learn from our mistakes. But if we just don't do anything about it and we don't make some kind of change, then how are we going to get better? That's the whole goal of the government. What it should be, right? The whole goal of the government should be to better our way of life.
All right.
That's a good point.
Yes.
But
I will just say I went through TSA about 12 times flying with a knife in my wallet. And it was a fold-out credit card knife.
You got some of those?
Yeah.
Oh, man, those are great.
And I totally forgot about it. I had it in my wallet for a long time, and I flew at least 12 times and went through TSA checkpoints with it and never had a problem. Las Vegas, of all places, shout out to Las Vegas, mad props, pulled me aside. And as soon as they pulled me aside, I remember what it was about, and I'm like, "Here you go. Just take it, And I could have signed forms and whatnot. I'm like, no. I just totally forgot it was like $3. I mean, here you go, But the point being, all right, government institutes things all the time. I don't trust government to get anything right. If criminals really want to skirt the law, they will. That's why
too much gun control is going to cause more criminals to come out.
Exactly,
and that's what we don't want.
Exactly. But to address a couple of these comments, because there's been some great ones along the way here, and we're getting into the kind of wrapping up phase of the show here. Scott said, he goes, "Where's my tank?" It's off the screen right now, but I loved it.
It's over there parked in the heights.
Hashtag Where's my cannon? Yeah, David said that. Hashtag Where's my cannon? Scott said, "Me with a tank is way safer than the government with a tank." You and I, Scott, we're on the same page, brother. We're on the same page. I want my freaking tank. I'll park in the backyard. Anybody gets uppity as far as the government concerned, I'm ready to go. That's how I see it, right? So we got a couple good comments here. So to you, David chimed in. He said, "Be careful, Taurian. Are you encouraging that we repeal the Second Amendment?"
Not appeal.
So listen, I know where he's coming from with this.
Repeal.
Okay. I know where he's coming from on this. So he says, Second Amendment says it's a right, right? So if we want to change right to privilege, you would have to repeal the Second Amendment.
Or you can amend it.
Amend the Second Amendment, right? So we'll get some thoughts on that, right? David also said a felon cannot legally own a gun in Texas. The gun show is a red herring. Just because he has the ability to purchase the weapon doesn't mean it is legal for him to do so. Felons forfeit certain rights of citizenship. One is the right to vote. Another is right to own a firearm. David, so we'll comment on that as well. Janine said, yes, she is smart.
I guess that's me.
Yay! The only female on the show. It has to be her, yes.
Thank you.
Sherwin said, I can't believe I'm listening to this. How about you have the right to bear arms but no right to kill? Killing in the name of safety is fake. If you frequently go to the range... Ranga, but I'm sure that's range. I'm sure shooting at the leg or arm would be possible, but the act of shooting to kill is the crime. Okay, so there's lots to unpack there.
Oh yeah.
Most guns and killings are purchased illegally anyway. Donald Bro, great comment. I agree. The point of that again. It's the thing that blows my mind always in this conversation is we already have laws on the books, right? We already have a law that says you can't kill. It's illegal, right? I'm pretty sure that's a freaking law, right? We even have degrees. We have ratings and all kind of stuff. Hate crimes and crimes of passion and, first degree, second degree. They're all illegal. It's not okay to kill people, right? It's already on the books. So what part of establishing a new law that says you can't buy this gun or that gun or you can't own this gun because you're cray-cray and you're on drugs, whatever, what part of having those laws makes us think it's going to work? Because we already have laws.
And they haven't, so...
And they haven't solved the dang thing. So how do we... I don't even understand. This is the part where I'm just like, I don't even belong in this conversation.
We do need to point out the fact, Joe, that the latest incident...
I got all ramped up there. I need more wine.
We're in a state that has very liberal gun laws. There's more freedom to purchase and own and possess, and there's no restrictions, really, when you get right down to it. The one thing that differs from most shootings is that there was one guy that took umbrage to this person killing all those people, and he went after him. And he didn't go after him with mud patties. He went after him with another rifle.
You know what I told somebody? I don't want to cut you off, but you know what I told somebody this week? I said, we as politicians, we like to use things to our advantage.
Sure.
If he would have accidentally shot somebody,
everybody would be pissed.
The story would have went completely in the opposite direction. I agree that I don't know the whole story because I'm not there, but if I was to look at the story from the outside, I would say that was a fantastic job done by those two guys to chase him down, pin him down in the corner, and point their weapons at him. Right? But the way the story read at first was there was a gun blaze throughout the city of only 600 and something people.
And that's news sensationalizing the event.
We
have to understand that the news is
super short
be
version
full of beans.
For your benefit, super short version. Dude saw what was going down, has a rifle in his car, busted it out, shot him. The guy stopped what he was doing, jumped in his car, took off. That guy went and got a stranger, said, "Hey, this is what's going down. Let's make sure we chase him down." They chased him down until police got there, and the guy was dead.
Joe, one of the things
so that was what I know about it.
A very good friend of mine, he's a top-rated civil attorney here in the state of Texas. He's also a firearms instructor. He's the guy that sat back in the early 90s and helped Senator Jerry Patterson and a few other people write the Texas CHL law. He lives in Friendswood. He's also a member of the board of directors of the NRA. Those are his credentials. When he gives a discussion, when he talks about things to people who are wanting to know the legal side of gun ownership, he says, when you take on the responsibility of carrying a gun for lawful self-defensive purposes, no matter what that is, okay, as defined, that he says that you skin that thing and you go to work with it, every cotton picking bullet that leaves that gun is going to have a lawyer on it. And when you made that point about, if you're just going to go out there and spray to try to hit a person in a church shooting, you better be not only responsible for that action, but you're going to be held accountable for it legally, no matter if you were right in doing that or not. Mm-hmm. And so the responsibility of a gun owner goes way beyond just the being able to purchase and possess and store and use, whatever you want to call it.
Very true.
So people who are responsible and do have common sense, we understand the legal aspects. I've become a student of the law in this state. I know some of the laws in other states where I go visit where I can carry my firearm. Okay? So it says so in the law that when you feel that it is necessary to go to work with that firearm, the verbiage basically is if you reasonably determine that force or deadly force is necessary to stop that action from somebody else, you got to make a decision. Mm-hmm. You can very well just flee and get away from it, grab anybody that's with you and put them into safety. But the thing is that people are not going to change their lives because of this threat. They're still going to go to concerts. They're still going to go to church. They're still going to go to movie theaters. They're still going to... We want that to continue. We don't want that to be curbed from this fear of somebody might get up on the stage and start mowing people down. Well, dadgummit, if there was one person in there on each one of these incidents like we had in Texas, we can stop that. One person can make a difference. And I'm not saying that this is a reason. This is not justification. This is life. And that we need to think about this from a global standpoint of I don't want anything to happen to any one of y'all. If somebody came into this, they'd have to crawl over my dead ass. Okay, that's what's going to happen.
Steve is on a twofer for the show today.
And I don't do that very often, but I'm saying that there is some responsible people out there. The guy, even that, I was watching the news and I was seeing this guy and he's wearing that cowboy hat and he had tattoos all up on his neck, but he seemed to have the right idea. However goofy he looked or whatever, it seemed to me like we need more of that. We really need more of that in our society.
I just don't believe that if someone came running into my church or my bank or wherever, that I need an AK to take this person down. I can do it with a 40 cal or a 9 mil. And if you are not a
so what's the AK for?
What is the AK for? I'm not sure. For mowing people down.
Because
some people say for hunting, but
Janine asked the same question.
I don't know any guy that I know that's going to take his AK-47, and I know you for a fact, and I've seen it.
Steve,
AK-47.
Steve, can you answer
no.
this?
Yes.
So
Steve
to
and or
piggyback
Charity.
on the first point that he said about every bullet has a lawyer on it, and that should be, just the repercussions of, you're going to have to answer and be responsible for every bullet. Well, then it goes back to, both of those, a bunch of the actually mass shootings, they ended up killing themselves right after they shot everybody. So it's like they can't be trialed or, have a fair trial, So it's, again, it goes back to preventative. Like, we need to have a little bit more preventative, not for the government to completely step in and take our guns away. I'm totally against that, as you should know by now, but there needs to be more standards.
So I really want to address this question.
Yeah.
Because it's so doggone relevant to the conversation. I've already preached about it, but it keeps coming up through comments. Janine asked, and you asked, and then I even asked you the point. Janine said, no one's carrying an assault rifle to work. She said, scroll up just a little bit, baby. She said, I simply ask, why do you need an assault rifle? I am saying the type of weapon is what we should be focusing on. And this gets to the very heart of my point from the beginning of this show. What is the point of an assault rifle? And it's AR is not assault rifle, by the way. AR is the manufacturer name. It has nothing to do with assault rifle. Assault rifle is one of those cute terms that Congress came up with in the media to poke your emotions. Assault is a verb, right? Every gun, when used to kill somebody, is an assault weapon, right? I joke about the goofball in New York who killed 8 people with his assault rental truck, the AR truck, all right? Because he rented a truck and he ran over 8 people. He used it for assault. Assault is a verb, not a noun. The AR-15 does not stand for assault rifle.
Joe, I'd like to give some
So,
historical perspective on this.
I'm going to ask this question. Why do citizens need, it's been asked, he said it, Gianna, was it Jean? I said Janine. No, Janine Harris said it again. She asked, right? And I get the question a lot, right? It's a common question, and I totally get the point, right? Semi-autos, Taurian said, anybody with a little military experience
or Google experience,
can turn that semi-automatic into an automatic. Why do we need these freaking weapons available to citizens? Why? Answer the question,
okay.
Steve.
There's some historical perspective here, and I want to book in this with.
I always learn something new on this show.
Back in the day, when the English, the Brits, were having a little bit of a problem with the colonies, they hated the way that our guys could smack them from very long distances. What morphed into what was known as the Kentucky long rifle. Historically, I think in the Army they kind of teach you the metamorphosis of Army personal weapons. I don't know if they really do this or not anymore, but I mean it's available for anybody who wants to look at this. the history of guns are there's a book out there that says this, and I mean, put out by some pretty knowledgeable people. And one of them happens to be, I think Chris Kyle wrote a book before he was murdered about the history of the gun. And the Brits hated those Kentucky-type long rifles. And if you really wanted to get out there and modify that, you had a barrel that was given about 4 to 6 more inches. You could get about another 50 meters out of that shot. And that used to really hack off a lot of people on the other side of this. So we were very effective in modifying weapons to give us the advantage. Okay, I don't see much of a difference nowadays when you can take a basic AR style weapon and modify it for capacity, for barrel efficiency, the repeating nature of the shots with the bump stocks. Anybody who is an avid shooter like I am, when we first started hearing about these bump stocks years ago, a lot of us shied away from them. There's no reason. I mean, you're blowing ammunition, you're blowing money. If you just want to go out there and just all day, that's your problem. I'm a marksman, okay? And so I can hit something out to a mile with the things that I have, okay? I don't have an awful lot. My enthusiasm is in the skill achieved with firearms, and I want to duplicate that with other people. I want to teach them what I know, okay? I don't teach them things like, well, gosh, you know, I really hate this thing in the politics, so I think I'm going to go out there and waste a politician. You know, those are the kind of things I shy away from, and if I hear somebody talking about that, I usually back off from that person. I say, have a nice day.
So why does the AR, why does the citizen need to own that? That's what I'm getting at.
The AR is typically a military-based weapon.
Yeah, let's be clear. I hate the term AR
because I have used them. We own them. I don't know if you own one.
I don't own AR.
Okay. But no, see, I never assumed that. Okay, I just would assume that you're familiar with the operation.
I am.
The real reason behind all this, to own an AR, is simply because I want to have the ability to effectively defend myself against a tyrannical government. It sounds conspiratorial. It sounds unreasonable. It sounds like, gosh, Steve, you're just an absolute nutball case that needs to go live in your basement and play video games. No, that's not what I'm going to do. I want people to understand that the reason behind that Second Amendment is that we should have the right to own the effective means to defend ourselves against any threat that we perceive. And that's a choice. You don't have to do it, okay?
But it
would
would never happen.
Tell you that you have to do it.
Because in order for that to happen, all three branches of the government would have to conspire to agree. And that has not happened in the last decade, at least, right? And even after that happened, then you would have to defeat the military. It's not going to happen with AR-15s. It's not going to happen with AK-47s, M16s, M4s, any of those, right? We do not have weaponry great enough to defeat the military. Other countries don't have weaponry great enough to defeat our military. So the thought or the perception that we're going to overthrow the military if they become tyrannical is absurd.
I've heard that argument too, but
and I disagree.
Do you really think
it's a protective measure.
Do you really think the entire military will follow a corrupt government?
Of course not, and that is why we would never have to have the need for the
That's where
weapons.
I agree. I think it's absurd that the United States military, the service branches that we served in, would turn on its own people. There may be certain elements that would do that, but I tell you what, 80+ million people in this country that are avid gun owners are way more than what the government could possibly field in any internal thing. We got that.
I don't
covered,
care.
man.
I don't care what technology.
You would be right there alongside us.
I can prove this point. I can prove this point.
It's not going to happen.
Hang on. I can prove this point because I've heard that statement many times and absolutely respect it. Right. I will say that I guarantee you're familiar with this in real time right now, right? Why that is not true. 80 million people. Imagine going to war with 80 million well-armed people, right? On a guerrilla warfare level, door-to-door tactics, right? We already see in the Middle East how difficult it is to deal with that scenario.
That would be
right?
if 80 million people agreed with the same scenario. This is America. We can't
Certainly.
get 50 people to agree on the same story.
Certainly true. Certainly true. I will say.
Maybe get 4
But
people.
it would be a very, it would be a very
wait.
fragmented resistance.
Sure, absolutely.
But it's effective.
But hang on, look, to make this case, right? If there was a Hitler scenario, right, and that type of scenario is what we would be dealing with here, right? It would be easier to unite people on that front, right? And now, my point is that I think it's far less likely to happen simply because the people in power know that they're dealing with 80 million people who have sufficient weaponry. And would we be able to resist the military if the military was united and trying to take a house or whatever?
It's
no, of
different,
course
though,
not.
because Steve probably packs his own ammo, right?
Yeah.
But if the government, if we really want to overthrow the government, right, they would systematically, and I use the word they, I hate that word.
Sure, no,
but
I understand.
It's very general.
Yeah.
And I understand where you're coming from. No,
They would have to assume that the overthrow was coming, right? So
of course.
ammo would be immediately limited.
It's way less
immediately, except for the people that were packing their own ammo, right?
Right, and I'll tell you,
or bought it.
Or bought it previously.
Right. So I was going to say, look, I'm far from a gun nut. I have a pistol and I have a rifle, one of each.
Gotta have a shotgun too.
Right. I really want a shotgun. I really want a shotgun. Right. I have friends that are way more.
By the way, shameless plug. There is a gun show in Pasadena this weekend. So, Joe, you gotta go.
Let me put it this way. Depending on how the mess hit the fan, I have a set of friends on the south side of town, and I have a set of friends out in the sticks on the north side of town, right? So depending on which side of town the mess hit the fan tells me which direction I'm going, right? But even me, I have about 150 rounds at the house. That is no big stock by any means. But 150 rounds, I could put up a decent little fight, for Joe's household, right? So I think I think it would be any government is going to be very reluctant when there's 80 million armed people.
They're
right?
reluctant
and so,
now.
Of course. And there's a fake saying, and I'm guilty of spreading it. And until recently, I went and researched it. The Japanese, it wasn't said by the Japanese general that they didn't invade America because they were afraid of a rifle behind every blade of grass.
He did say that.
Yes, he didn't. It's falsely attributed to.
I would like to see that data.
Yeah, I believe me. I shared that quote.
But the sentiments were
But the sentiments
applicable.
exactly. The sentiments are correct in that no military wants to have to go into that guerrilla warfare, door to door fighting when they know that there's a freaking gun in like every other household.
Okay, so
right?
he brings up a point.
So in Iraq, and just so it's known, every family just about in Iraq has an AK. Every family. We didn't win that war. We didn't. Oh, I shouldn't say that on camera. But
it's okay.
I don't know. I'm still active.
No, you're right. I mean, look, it's still going on. We're still there.
Were not. We didn't fear going into the country. Now, I'm not. That's a whole nother show that I can't be on.
Yeah.
But I do believe that. Okay, so if we use stories like Hitler or any other great person that took over their whole country, confiscated all the weapons, if we use that in America, then I believe that's a scare tactic. It's never going to happen here in the United States of America. And if it did, then the 80 million gun owners, including myself, would oppose it, right?
Well, the thing is, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens little by little, and I think that's what his concern is if we start restricting
part of it,
it's a slippery slope. Kind of like with marijuana and with gay rights, and we can, all that kind of stuff.
Multiple other shows,
Multiple other shows, right? Vaccines, right, which they just did last week, So it is a slippery slope. It happens little by little. It's not just overnight. So you say nothing like that can happen here. Well, maybe not tomorrow.
Yeah, I disagree. It's
happened.
Not only
it's happened back in Europe back in the day.
But at the same time, we still
it
have
didn't just happen with. It was more so of not just a gun control. It wasn't a gun control issue.
No,
at all.
it wasn't based on gun control.
No, so
something else.
As Scott just said, they never thought it could happen in Germany either.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They loved Hitler.
Right.
That's why they voted him.
This is my point is,
in the beginning.
Look, this is I've touched
Right?
I've touched on and alluded to this point multiple times, that freedom and the cost of freedom, right, is this sort of thing, right? The cost of the First Amendment is we have to listen to morons. The cost of the Second Amendment is 188 people out of 323 million.
Yeah.
As heartbreaking as it is, it's 0.0001%, whatever. It is a very tragic cost, but it's a cost of a very beautiful freedom. And the beautiful freedom is defending against a Stalin, a Mao, a Hitler, etc. Because the off chance that it does happen once every 100 years, once whatever the number is, 60 to 75 million people disappeared because of Stalin, right? I guarantee you, if that was America, if Stalin came to power in America today, it wouldn't happen. Because there's 80 million freaking armed people that says, no, I disagree, Stalin. We're going to have a different conversation.
The more realistic scenario is that what Sherwin was arguing about is how many times should a person fire their weapon to defend themselves with an AR-15 against a criminal? Well, I'm going to answer that question because that actually is a more realistic scenario for each and every one of us in this room. We are going to encounter a criminal someday. How we address that is going to be more realistic. It's going to be with, if you want to get down to brass facts here, I'm going to do you with a handgun, or if I'm in my home, you're going to get shotgunned, okay? I'm not going to have time to go into my gun safe. Hey, time out. Let me open up my gun safe here. Let me get out my AR. Okay, boom, I got you. That's going to take a little bit too much time that I will not be afforded. You will not be afforded. Nobody will be afforded that.
Handguns.
So
shotguns.
the more immediate need is a handgun or a shotgun in the home. Okay? That is a statistical fact. Okay? So the assault rifle, AR-15, use it against a criminal is unrealistic at best.
It is. It has.
The
AR is not about home defense.
I'm not going to sleep with my AR sitting right there.
But how far do those bullets travel?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not penetrate. It's just not safe in a city.
The AR, to be clear, and this is still answering this question: why does anybody need to own the AR?
It's more of the tyranny thing.
Exactly. I would put the doggone semi-automatic weapon in the closet and hope to never see it, other than the times I take it to the range for practice.
Insurance policy.
Right, it's an insurance policy. Exactly right. However, I keep my 40 cal in the nightstand with the shredding hollow point tips ready to go in a clip. All I got to do is, I'm ready. I got 15 rounds ready to kill somebody if they get into my house. The only thing better than that is if I had a doggone sawed off, to legal, shotgun ready to go, because that's the best home defense weapon. Home defense.
Not to mince words about terminology here, but Joe, Taurian, Charity,
I have a drinking problem.
We are not going to kill anyone.
No.
We are going to stop them. If, for some reason, you got a good shot on them and you drop them like a sack of potatoes, okay, good on you, because you reasonably determined that force and deadly force was necessary and legal to stop a threat against you or someone else.
And I hate to leave
this state,
because I know the show's probably coming to
Yeah.
You know what? The beautiful thing about this show is we can go as long as we want.
That's right.
This is a long show already, but you know what? We can go as long as we want. Hey, baby, in fact, would you give me some more wine? Because I really need some more wine. Would you grab the box from the conference room? Pretty please? I want another glass. I want another glass.
We've done good today. I think the discussion.
Well, there's a question on the table for you.
I have one statement too.
He said, "For the gentleman in the Navy, first, thank you for your service. I would like to know: have you ever protected your home from a criminal?" Renee said that.
Yes, I have.
Ooh. Yes, he has, Renee.
And so I have to also ask a question, and the question just slipped my mind. She said, "For the gentleman in the Navy, thank you for protecting your home from a criminal." And my question was, with that same weapon, right? It was probably a shotgun. Did you fire it?
Yes.
So you had to fire it.
Oh, dang.
I have to be very careful with the way I answer it because it's kind of
gotcha.
obvious what happened.
Okay.
But I can say that legally everything was reviewed properly by lawful authority, and it is what it is.
So
do I live with the fact that I did defend myself and it wasn't just because it was my home. I was defending myself. Somebody breaking into your home does not have all the best intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this happened many years ago.
Okay. And you know what? The fact that you can sit here and talk to us about it means that you made the right decision. Now,
I wouldn't be here.
Now, what I'm willing to say is when I first moved to Texas, and this is when I thought you were going to end the show. When I first moved to Texas, there was the story of a guy that defended his neighbor's home as the burglar was leaving the home.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the 911 attendant
Joe told him to shut it down.
Joe Horn.
Yeah, said, do not,
engage.
Pursue, do not engage. And he did anyway, and he was found not guilty. As a homeowner, as a person that pays rental insurance here in Texas, I don't need you to defend my home with someone's life. Let the judge, because he's going to be found guilty. We have cameras on the house. We have homeowners insurance. We have nosy neighbors insurance. We have everything. You do not have to take this person's life. Because the same way we said that the mentally disturbed person may get healthy and can probably purchase a gun 10 years from now, is the same way
refrigerator
that this person breaking into my house for whatever reason they seem fit, if they get past the dogs and they get out the house, let the police get them.
In most instances, you reasonably determine that action was not necessary because that threat to possessions was not to you or to a third person.
Right.
So
and I may be wrong. David can
tell
us if I'm wrong or not. But before I came here, I believe it was you can defend your neighbor's house, also in Texas.
Yes.
Right? And so, at what point?
It's nice and cold.
At what point can you make a reasonable decision and say, okay, they stole the television, let them get away with the television?
And you know as well as I do that's one of the hardest things that you have to do as a human being is to decide whether or not are your possessions, is your wine collection, is your
it's
photos,
just a monetary value.
Is your TV, is it worth somebody's life?
Nobody's breaking in your house and stealing pictures.
It is not. That is not the point.
We've lost more to flood waters than we've lost.
That's right. So are you going to murder floodwaters? No, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to take my AR and go,
even though you may have wanted to.
Even though I wanted to. I got 2 feet of water in my house in 15 minutes during that flood.
Yeah.
So I didn't even have time to cop a squat. Yeah. So it's like, there's nothing you can do against something like that. But in this instance, where there's a human factor involved with this, if it is not a direct threat to you, then no, you have to, by law, reasonably determine if that threat is something against you or somebody else. By law in Texas, you can decide that. You have to reasonably determine. That is in the law. Mm-hmm. So all this, and really the whole idea and issue about self-defense is another show. Mm-hmm. And I can talk to that about that for hours. I guarantee I can bring in all sorts of reference material that talks about this, that dovetails very nicely in with the actual instruments that we use to defend ourselves. I could use a machete. I could use a bazooka. I could use a paper clip with a rubber band. I could kill you with one of those things. I mean, it's that simple.
I will tell you, I'm going to wrap up on this point. This has been...
America needs more talks over wine.
That's right.
That's Renee.
Oh, yeah.
And Ursula said earlier, I have to say this. Ursula said, look out for my Dine No Wine show, right? Right? Dine No Wine. And you know what the crazy thing is, Ursula? I have to tell you, just this weekend, I had somebody, a total stranger, call me up out of the blue and say, basically, Joe, craziest thing, I have been doing the Whine No Wine show for the last 2 years, but over dinner with my friends from the neighborhood. Would you be open to considering doing a eating show, right? With the same idea.
I don't know about that.
And I had chocolate in my mouth full.
The Dine No Wine show, maybe coming to
These teeth are like a net. They catch everything.
Wait. You got a little bit of Spanish right there in your teeth there, man. You're not going to have to clear that up.
Who knows? It could be happening, right? And do we need more of this? Do we need more of this? Yes.
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 So listen, I will tell you guys, there's actually science behind the show, the way the show works. In the media, my daughter's cued the music already. In the media,
That's a signal. There you
we
go.
have-
Pass it down.
yes, in the
Pass it
media,
down.
we have us versus them dynamics, right? The media creates us and them dynamics. They try to pit us against each other. It sells. It sells. That's the reality. On this show, it's about we dynamics. And we accomplish that through sharing wine with each other. We're all enjoying wine together, and that makes for a we group. So that's part of how we address the problems at hand. So when we disagree, it's not so hostile because we're a we group, not an us and them group, right? So anyway, great comments today, guys. I mean, like, great comments. I already know. It's gonna take me hours to go through everything and comment with some good comments.
They like the page.
Be sure to like and follow the page. Make sure you click on the send message button. This is very important. Click on the send message button, hit the get started option so that you will subscribe to the show so you'll know each week when we're going live.
I'm ready.
Share the show. We're on a mission. We're on a mission to save America, one civil conversation at a time. So we're going to rate the wine today. This wine was a Spanish wine. It's called Aguilar, and it's a Tempranillo, a 2015. And I will let Steve kick off the rating here. Tell us what you think of the wine today.
I'm really a fan of reds, and I mean, it pairs real nicely with the foods that we would normally eat with this. But I tell you, I'm going to give this one a 4, a solid 4. It's something I would buy and drink at home. That's simple.
All right.
Well, I have no complaints, so I give it a 5.
Outstanding.
There you
Yeah,
go. Wow.
really good.
I tell you what, I learned something about this wine. I will tell you, some wine needs to breathe longer than other wines, right? And the first time I had this wine, I liked it, but I didn't care for it as much. I opened this bottle much earlier this time, and so it had a lot more time to breathe. It really mellowed into a really, really nice wine.
It finished nice.
It finished nice. I really enjoyed it. 4.5 grapes from Joe here. 4.5 grapes.
4.5 from your dad.
No complaints, but I am going to give it a 4. It was a nice, smooth wine. And now I get to go have me a steak to accompany it.
Right? We need steaks.
Yeah.
When the budget increases for the show, we're going to have steaks. I thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please share the show because we really are on a mission to save America, one civil conversation at a time. And now we are out. I'll see you guys next week, Friday at 5 o'clock. Be sure to tune in for our new show, the Wine No Wine Show Artist Edition, which is on Thursdays at 7 p.m. We're out of here, guys.